U3 video 14, Jefferson's presidency. Go to socialstudiesgames.net, find a bunch of cool stuff, but do it after the video. The election of 1796, didn't talk about this in the previous video. We've already talked about some of the things that were happening in 1796 and the foreign issues and we didn't mention who was president. It was John Adams. But let's go back and just talk about this election. This is the first contested election. Washington is done. Washington warns, don't start political parties. And they start political parties. They didn't listen to him, but it makes sense. If you want to get elected, you're going to need people to help you. So Jefferson, with the help of the Democrat-Republican Party, can get elected. And you could look at the other way. The Democratic Republican Party or the political party needs someone to get elected. A party can't get elected. So the party needs the leader needs the party. They have similar goals. Once they get into office, then they can push their policy and push for laws. So they use each other then, they use each other now. It will be the Democratic Republican Party. The Federalist Party will work with John Adams. John Adams gets 71 electoral votes and Jefferson gets 68. John Adams will be president from 1796 to 1800. We've already talked about what's happened during that time. I'm sorry that I didn't mention John Adams as president, but he was the president in previous videos. Funny thing about then was that if you came in second place, you were vice president. So when John Adams lost Washington, John Adams was Washington's vice president. And when Jefferson loses to Adams, he becomes the vice president. So that kind of makes sense when we talk about in the last video, the Kentucky resolves. And why would Thomas Jefferson, the vice president, write a resolution that goes against what the federal government wanted? Well, because he wasn't necessarily on John Adams' team. He didn't get along with John Adams when they were on the cabinet with Washington, and he didn't get along with Adams when he was vice president because he lost to John Adams. He was running against him. So yeah, it makes sense why he wrote the Kentucky resolution. Makes you think today, how fun would it be if we brought this back and we had a Trump and Biden, whoever's president, whoever's vice president? Sounds like a comedy. It could be terrible, but it might work. It might be just crazy enough that if you force those two guys to work together, maybe the country would be okay. Or maybe they would burn everything down. Probably the latter. So we're going to run it back in 1800. John Adams, president, he'll run again. Thomas Jefferson's going to give it a second go. This time, Jefferson is going to win, and he will become president, and they change the vice president rules. Aaron Burr will become vice president, who consequently will try to start a nation within a nation, and then will later kill Alexander Hamilton. That's a story for another day. Either way, 1800 and moving forward into this video, Thomas Jefferson finally gets his shot. Thomas Jefferson, the guy that was fighting and angry in the cabinet of Washington, always disagreeing. Thomas Jefferson, the guy that actually wrote the Kentucky resolution against, finally, after complaining and always going against government, all right, now it's your turn. You finally get the power. You're always yelling at people. So what are you going to do, Jefferson? Now you get to call the shots. And Jefferson and the Democratic Republican Party, their big plan was shrink the government. Small government, limited government, reduce the role of the federal government is their big plan. All right, that's going to be the plan, but there's a lot of things going on in the world. Mainly the Napoleonic Wars. We kind of led up to this. We had the French Revolution, which was a disaster. And the way that the French Revolution gets resolved is the people are just tired of it. The people realize that they're not capable of democracy. And they just said, fine, just let the dictator run. We'll let Napoleon call the shots. If that means that I'll get my head chopped off today, fine, I'll take a dictator. Democracy? Okay, so on one hand, I have democracy, and then maybe someone's going to drown me or chop my head off with a guillotine. I say guillotine because it could be a guillotine or a guillotine. Democracy and a guillotine, or dictator, and you get to live. The French people said, I'm just going to choose to live, so Napoleon will take over, and Napoleon will basically turn Europe into France. It conquers all of Europe. So it's kind of working out for the French people. Good decision. Forget about democracy. Let's just take over the world. So Napoleon's doing well. He's conquering the world, but all of this conquering Europe is going to cost money. And he needs to raise money. So on one hand, he needs to raise money. Also, there's this slave rebellion in Haiti. So he looks over at the Western Hemisphere. He's like, I'm done with the Western Hemisphere. Let the Haitians have Haiti and all this land in America. I don't need it. I'm focused on conquering Europe. Just get rid of it all. Sell it. I need cash. I need cash fast. 1877, need cash fast. J.G. Whitmore. Now, J.G. Whitmore wasn't around, so Napoleon had to find another way to get cash. And he says, hey, America, your land's already there, so we'll just sell it to you. And Jefferson's like, we'll buy it from you. Cool. Good deal. problem, and this is going to be a recurring theme in Jefferson's presidency, it's a recurring theme today. We all have these principles, we have these values, and we try to stay consistent with them. Some people do. Some people don't care. They bend their values however they want. Those are the people that we don't really like around these parts. But Jefferson was this guy who always tried to stay consistent. He had these principles, small government, and you got to follow the Constitution. But then when it comes time where he's got power and he gets to make the decisions, finally, he's the guy in charge. And he's the one that's going to be limited by the Constitution. And all of a sudden, it's like, Constitution, what? I do whatever I want. Honey boo boo child. So the Constitution says you can't buy land. If you look through the Constitution, it does not say anywhere in there where the federal government has the authority to purchase land. And remember, Jefferson's a limited government guy. He believes in a strict interpretation. You can only do what the government says. So look, he's going to be principled. He's going to be consistent, and he's going to refuse to buy the land because he just doesn't have the power. No, he's going to buy the land. I thought you believed in small government. Small government is going to follow the Constitution, doesn't believe they can do whatever they want. Big, powerful government believes do whatever I want, which means buying land from, and we're talking about spending a lot of money here, a lot of the taxpayers' money. That doesn't sound like limited government. That doesn't sound like small government. Anyway, so he'll buy the land and we get the Louisiana Purchase. It's a smart move in hindsight. It was a smart move at the time as well. It's just inconsistent and hypocritical. But what should we expect from our leaders? What should we even expect from ourselves? So that's the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. All of this land here west of the Mississippi is named after King Louis, because it was French land. So that makes sense. And it's not all Louisiana, but we still have the state of Louisiana. So here is the land. Now we got to find out what we got. Like, wait a second, we bought all this land. We didn't even know what we got. Welcome to America, folks. We just bought all this land. We didn't even know what was in it. It's got to be good. It's land, right? You can't get land anywhere. So what if it's a giant desert? It's not a giant desert. It's decent land. Yeah, but it's just whatever. Well, just go find out. So we send Lewis and Clark to go figure out what it is. They go on this adventure and meet all the different American Indian tribes and survey the land and find out, all right, is this thing worth it? And it's a pretty cool story. It's kind of like the first astronauts, really, if you want to explain it. Now, this is the point where you're probably saying, we're just learning a bunch of random facts. I hate social studies and history. It's just a bunch of stuff. You are right. It is a bunch of stuff. But the research is overwhelmingly clear. Read any of the works by E.D. Hirsch. These are all books by E.D. Hirsch. And the research, overwhelmingly clear. The facts matter. Knowledge matters. We build knowledge upon knowledge upon knowledge. That's how we learn. That's how the human brain works. And these facts, they created background knowledge for me and for you and for everyone watching this video. The thousands and millions of people watching. Millions of people don't watch your video. All right, fine. But when we all learn the same basic facts and the same cultural knowledge, we all share that knowledge. And having a shared background knowledge allows us to communicate with each other effectively. When we don't know the same things, we are different, it divides us. The way that we have created this unified nation is by having a shared background knowledge. And that shared background knowledge is based on facts. So it might seem like we're learning a bunch of stuff, but if everyone learns the same bunch of stuff, we all know the same bunch of stuff, and we can all talk to each other. If we do not learn the same bunch of stuff, then adults cannot communicate with each other because adult A and adult B don't know the same things. They don't understand the same things. They have different views, and they talk past each other. They can't communicate, and that's why we are where we are today. The guy's been warning us for about 30 years that this was going to happen. No one listened. All these books have shown over and over and over. The research has shown it over and over. The facts matter. It's good to remember the facts. That's why I'm always in these videos saying, look, if you can't do the high level stuff and you can't defend and criticize and analyze, it's okay. That's fine. If all you're getting out of this is Lewis and Clark explored the West after we purchased the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon. So we bought this land from this dictator emperor from Napoleon. We got the land, and Lewis and Clark were like astronauts and they explored it. If you just know those basic facts, that's good. We're all going to learn these basic facts. We're all going to have the same common knowledge that we can build on and unite around. I hope that I convinced you. Government tries to avoid conflicts. Let's get back into it. So Napoleon is having a war. So really, Europe's having this war. We're still trying to buy and sell goods. We're sending our goods over to England. Guess what? And we're sending our goods over to France. We've talked about this in the last video. The same thing is happening. If we sell guns to France, England's going to say no. And if we sell guns to England, France is going to say no. So we are shipping goods to France, and England is still impressing our soldiers. We're going back over this again. Is this going to end? No, it's not going to end until you really resolve it. And we're not trying to resolve it. We're trying to avoid conflict. So they're impressing our soldiers still. Remember the XYZ affair? Remember the Jay Treaty from the last video? It's still happening. Oh no, now Jefferson, the guy who was always like, we got to go to war. We got to stop this. Remember Washington was dealing with this, when Adams was dealing with this. Jefferson's like, we can't let them insult us like that. They need to put some respect on our name. We can't. Now Jefferson's like, well, I don't know if we really need to go to war. We'll just figure something out. And so he doesn't go to war. What he does, so the guy calling for war, now he gets to decide, like, no, we're going to do an embargo. People are like, what's an embargo? Good question. An embargo is where we shut off all trade with the country. An embargo. So you cannot trade with anyone in Europe. Ooh, that sounds a little harsh, but think about it, folks. If we can't trade with Europe, we're not going to sail over to Europe. And if we don't sail over to Europe, then we can't get impressed. The British aren't going to seize our ships. The British aren't going to steal our goods. The British aren't going to impress our sailors. They're not going to force our merchant sailors to join the British Navy. If we just stay out of it, we will stay out of it. Like, wait, literally 5 seconds ago, you wanted to go to war with England because they were doing this. Remember when you said, France gave us money during the American Revolution. France is fighting for democracy. We got to stop the British. Now it's your turn. Like, no, we don't need to go to war with British. We're just gonna stay away from them. Those scary guys. So that's what we'll do. If you don't sail over there, you won't get impressed. And I'm not impressed. But hey, you know what? Maybe it's good to avoid war. Imagine that in America that thought maybe the first thing we're going to try to do is not get people killed. Today it seems to be the opposite. It's like, how's the way that we can have the most deaths possible? Whatever leads to that. So you can't go over there. It's an embargo. We'll study different embargoes throughout history. Sometimes it's a decent, it can work both ways. All right, so the problem with the embargo is, well, the good thing is no one's getting impressed. But look, you can't sell goods to Europe. You can't buy goods from Europe. And so you can see in 1806, we're doing fine. And all of a sudden, Jefferson's like, we're going to stop selling goods. You have a giant drop in exports and imports. And that's not good. The economy is going to collapse. People aren't making money. You got rid of a lot of imports. You got rid of a lot of exports. We need to be able to buy and sell from other countries. So, for example, money comes over. It's good, but not anymore because of the embargo. That money is gone. Wah, wah. So it hurts the economy, but it keeps us out of war. You got to choose. There are trade-offs. Thomas Sowell says there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. You have to make a choice. If you go with the embargo, it keeps us out of war, it protects Americans, but it destroys the economy. If we keep shipping goods over there, the economy is going to do well, but we're going to have American soldiers and sailors and merchants. Their life is going to be put at risk, and we're going to probably get drawn into a war eventually. There are trade-offs. You have to think about that when you make a decision. There's no perfect solution. So we look more at the embargo and what it entails. So not only can't sell goods to England, we can't export goods and make money that way, but we also can't import goods. It limits the amount of goods that we can get from England. And when we limit the amount of goods, it's going to raise prices. If we can get goods from England and get goods from America, that increases the supply of goods, which is going to drop the price. Well, now the supply of goods is going to shrink because you can't get goods from England. That's going to raise prices. But there are unintended consequences that actually benefit America in this situation. If we can't buy goods from England, if you can't buy shoes from England, if you can't buy a gun from England, if you can't buy your knickers from England or your shoes or socks or clothes or whatever you would like to buy from England, if you can't buy it, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to make it yourself, or you're going to start a factory or business where you make that good or product in America. And that's what's going to happen. The unintended consequence of this policy is it's going to force Americans to produce their own goods. And it's going to increase factories in America, which is going to then create jobs in America slowly but surely. Sure, the price of goods is going to increase, but that money is staying in America. You're going to pay more for your shoes, but the money that you pay for shoes creates jobs. And then that guy is going to buy stuff. And it helps increase the economy, and it starts to push America towards an industrialized economy and away from an agrarian economy. The embargo was all about staying out of war, but the big picture of the embargo is that it helps industrialize America and is going to push it towards being a world power. Now, the funny thing, if you remember from the beginning of this unit, when we talked about presidential cabinet video, Hamilton versus Jefferson and protective tariffs, you'll remember that Hamilton was all about tariffs, which is what the embargo is. The embargo limits goods from out of the country. A tariff also limits goods by taxing them. And the plan of the protective tariff was to industrialize America. Jefferson was against this. Remember, Jefferson envisioned an agrarian society, an economy based on agriculture. And so in the end, we go with Hamilton. The embargo is the opposite of what Jefferson wanted. The weird hypocrisies and the backwardsness of the Jefferson presidency. It's very fun. It's very interesting. Talk about your all-time backfires. But it's good. It's good for the country. It's just Jefferson finds a way to make things work, even though when he does the opposite of what he wants to do, it's strange, it's confusing, but in the end, it works out for America. We don't go to war, and in the long run, we create an industrialized society. So be able to define an embargo, it's just simply not trading with a country where there's a law passed. It's not like I'm not going to trade. It's where the government says, no, we cannot trade or sell with you because you're doing bad stuff. We see this today with economic sanctions. The government does not allow us. There's an embargo today with Cuba. I think they've actually kind of lifted that, where you couldn't buy and sell goods with Cuba for a long time. You can't buy and sell goods with Korea. If a country's doing stuff we don't like, Iran, there's an embargo. We call it economic sanctions, where you can't buy and sell goods to Iran. It's a law, and if you break it, you go to jail. And then defender criticizes views. They're all over the place.